Hey everybody, welcome to Board Game Heaven. My name is Raymond. In this video, I'd like to share some news with you about a Kickstarter project that I have been following for a long time, since 2018, by Maze Games. You might have heard of it. It's called OrcQuest Warpath, which is a cooperative dungeon crawler in which you are basically the orcs, the goblins, the bad guys fighting back the humans and the elves and the dwarves who have taken their land and their caves and whatnot. And this game has been in development for a long time, since 2018, when the project got kickstarted and got funded as well. And I'll give you some numbers. So they launched in May 2018, May 15th, and they funded on June 7th with 330,755 euros. So almost a third of a million, which is pretty impressive for an indie publisher who had so far only produced a card game, which was also called OrcQuest. Now, I'll talk a bit about the development of that game and the Kickstarter, what happened and what has happened now, because it looked like the backers were not getting their games. The project just stranded, the funds ran dry, and that was it. It was a write-off, but Maze Games have been searching for a solution for their problem, their financial problem, and looking for a party to buy their game and to finish it and get it into backers' hands. And the good news is that they have succeeded in that. You may have already seen the news, but I just wanted to go in a little bit more detail about that. And before I dive in, I'd like to ask you one favor. Please, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. That really helps the channel. Trying to grow the channel, I see that there's a whole lot of views that I get on YouTube from non-subscribers, so there's plenty of room for growth there. So if you could do me that favor and just hit the subscribe button, it's absolutely free, and I won't spam you with videos. I mostly do reviews and unboxings and some interviews. I'm going to Spiel in a couple of weeks, and I'll do some interviews there as well, so I'll get you a full report of that, something cool to look forward to, and do that every year. So please hit that subscribe button. I strive not to disappoint. So, all right, let's dive in then. Let me just switch to the Kickstarter. There we go. This was the original OrcQuest Kickstarter. So, like I said, this launched in 2018 and funded, and you can see there that it was pretty successful. They had over 2,200 backers and a third of a million. So let's just scroll through that for a little bit. They had a Goblin Pledge, which was the core game, and the applicable stretch goals. They had stretch goals for expansions as well, which was 80 euros. And then afterwards, you'd still need to pay shipping and VAT, but due to it never actually shipping, the original backers never paid for that, fortunately, so far. There was an early Orc Pledge, which got you the core box and the all the stretch goals, plus a Knolls expansion, more enemies, and a exclusive hero called Marides. There were only 5 left out of 500, so a lot of people went for the early Orc Pledge. Some people probably just backed out at the last moment. They had 500 backers at some point. Then there's the Orc Pledge, which was 9 euros more compared to the early Orc Pledge. So that already guaranteed they reached their funding goal. Having an early bird worked in this case. Usually, I'm not very against this tactic. I'm more against the FOMO tactics that some other publishers use. Here, you just had a little bit of a discount if you got in on the first 24 hours or 48 hours. I am not sure anymore. And then afterwards, you just had to pay a little bit more. So, I mean, that's fine with me. Then they had several expansions, and they bundled all of those expansions in the end in an all-in, which I backed. And it's over here, the Troll all-in pledge, which was 199 euros, which got you everything, just everything you see here. So what is everything? I'm just going to scroll through real quick, because there's a lot here. Here's the game. So it's a game with tiles, modular tiles, just square tiles, double-sided. You build your map based on that. There's scenarios in the rulebook, well, a separate scenario book. You have plenty of cards, plenty of miniatures. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, plays in about an hour, ages 14 and up. They have a French and an English version of the rules. So then they had lots of stretch goals, as you can see. Here were some stretch goals. They bundled them in smaller boxes. So, and this was included for free with your box. So, you know, they had Greedy and Doomed, which had a big ogre you could play, a troll, excuse me, and a Cthulhu orc, which I'm not sure. I think it was an enemy. It's a boss. The troll brute was a boss as well, but I think you could also play him as a hero. Seem to remember. And all those expansions came with some cards and some tiles. Right? There's the Gnoll update, the Gnolls that you could have as well as an extra set of enemies. We had hero boxes with new enemies, so it had several hero expansions, so you could play different heroes as well, and all of them, you know, bad guys like orcs and goblins and trolls and what have you, the greenskins. So yeah, and there were plenty of them. They have expansion for elves. They had an expansion for rats, you know, Skaven, if you will, ratmen, which looks a lot of fun with sewers, of course. You need to have sewers in a dungeon crawler. Here's the all-in pledge. So there's the gnolls. There's the Blood for Blood was barbarians. Royal Mines was dwarves. Death Crypt, undead. OrcQuest, which introduced 4 porcine heroes that could also be enemies. You could choose whether to play them as an enemy mob or as heroes. Wings and Claws basically brought a gargoyle and a Tarask into the game. There was an art book. You could get extra dice, all kind of stuff. So they talk about the mechanics. You had cards that you play. You spend points for badass actions, badass points. There's a track. You can gather points and spend them again. They have enemy boards that tell you how certain mobs work. Here are all the heroes and the enemies, again, with some lore explained. I'm going through this really quickly because there's just a whole lot. You can just go and type OrcQuest Warpath in Kickstarter and you'll find this and you can just scroll through this, you know, at your own leisure. But I'm going to do it faster even because we're halfway. As you can see, just how much of these gnolls there were. And they had female gnolls, which was pretty cool. They have female enemies. You don't see that very often. You know, with trolls and orcs and other generic fantasy monsters, they're usually always male for some reason because they have like 1 sculpt, sometimes 2. If you check Warhammer, mostly just male characters. So I like that they put in some effort to have some different genders in there as well, and it looked really cool. You know, some elves. All the same sculpts, but they did have different ones. There's another. See, here's female elves, casters, dragon saints, whatever those are, some special elite guard, I guess, of the elves. So yeah, it just goes on. These are all the stretch goals. It goes on and on and on. That's basically it. There, they talk about shipping. So this is the part that wasn't paid yet. Looking at in 2018, mind you, 15 to 20 euros for shipping to most countries, right? I mean, it's 2022. We know what happened. Double that. All right. If you're looking at shipping today, just double that. All right. Let's go over the updates. So what happened? They funded. They started production. They started developing the game, the rules, the molds, the sculpts and the molds, the tiles, the artwork, everything. And a lot of that was already done, as we've seen in the campaign. And then in July 2019, they received blank samples already. So, we thought, hey, production is well on its way. They've got the blank samples. They just need to approve it. Then they get some prints. And then they need to just give the green light. But in September 2019, which is this update, about that time, things started looking a little bit bad. They did have pictures of actual sculpts. So you can see here, they had a lot of pictures here and good quality pictures of the sculpts. You could zoom in on these. Let's see if we can Let's just try a few. This is cool. Let's look at these. So here you go. And I can zoom in a bit. So you can see these are pretty decent. These are pretty decent. Not bad at all. You can still see some mold lines here and here. So they might be a little bit rough around the edges, but these were the first, you know, proofs basically with the molds that they had. So they could just still check them and possibly make improvements. But this already looks pretty good. This, you know, I was not disappointed with these minis. There's some more here. So we have some elves, I guess, some guards. This is one of the middle one is one of the well, heroes you play, and summoner, and the Minotaur. That's a female orc, seems to be. The fangs there. So this all looked very promising. Maybe not the most detailed miniatures I've ever seen, but pretty close. Not bad at all. So, you know, so far so good. Then they showed us cards. They had all the artwork done, all the cards ready to print of the core game, the base game. Looked pretty good as well. Let's move on. Then in January 2020, they showed us this. Again, very promising. Progress of the various elements. So looking at this, most of it is done. They were working on a translation because it's a French company, Maze Games. They started in French. They were translated into English. So they still needed to do that. They were working on the layout of the rulebook, which is a lot of work. But the sculptures were done. We've seen the sculpts. The cards were almost done. We've seen cards of the core game. Maybe they needed a few more. And then they would start working on the expansion. The game tiles were done. The tokens were done. The rules were mostly done. Probably some play testing, some tweaking. Illustrations, almost done. So, you know, fantastic. Looks great. And it did look great. This was the first layout of the rulebook. They've changed some things. I'll show that later. And it looked very promising. But, you know, updates started getting more and more in between until finally in May 2020, they had the English rules. Before that, they had the French rules, and then they had the English rules. Now, in this update, you can't update them, but they're still on the Maze Games website. I have downloaded them. I'll show you in a bit. And you can see, hey, there's some more cards here. And here's the French edition. And these are pictures of the moles. Again, proof that they actually have this all done. So this looks pretty promising. You can actually see pictures of the insides of the moles. So sure, you know, that looked very, very good. So what happened next? They started talking about the expansions. They had updates per expansion telling you that they've been finished or almost finished. You can download the card sheets and look at them. And another progress. Hey, core box is completely done. The Sewer Fever expansion with the rats, done. Beasts in the Woods, done. Blood for Blood with the barbarians, done. The elves, the royal mines with the dwarves, Death Crypt, undead. OrcQuest with the porks, Wings and Claws, Greedy and Doomed. Almost. You know, they're like 75% done. Because, you know, expansions take a lot of time, and the art book. But still very promising, right? That's great news. So there's an update in 2021, and they tell us about the budget, right? Said, hey, we thought a few months would be enough to finalize the development and deliver the game in July 2019, mind you. They didn't. They wanted to relaunch the Kickstarter with the aim of keeping the project alive, promising additional content to gain more funds to keep this project alive, to actually be able. So this is where they finally kind of admitted, look, we've bitten off more than we could chew. We're just a few people. We're an indie company. We've spent the money. It's almost done, but we need to get it produced and shipped. We don't have money for that. And of course, with the problems that we had in the pandemic, of course, prices going through the roof. We all know the whole history. Don't need to repeat that here. They were in trouble. So updated quotations here. And yeah, everything, raw materials have increased more than 30%. Labor or transport, price is multiplied by 5, 6, or even 8 times. And this is not a lie. They didn't make up these numbers. We've seen that. So they're trying to find a solution. So they were looking for this already in 2021. This is a year ago. October 2021. This is a year ago. On their website, you can still download the rules and the quest book and have a look at all the cards and the expansions. Everything is here. Expansions, Beast in the Woods, the Blood for Blood, Elven Vestiges, Royal Mines, the Death Crypt, OrcQuest, Wings and Claws. See, all these expansions, they're there. The heroes, the new heroes that you could add, and the Minotaur, the final stretch goal. It's all there. Fantastic. Here's a quick look at the rulebook. But they were so far. They were so close. They just needed additional funding. But they have found a solution. I'll get to that. And you probably already know what I'm going to. So here's the rulebook. Look at that. 45 pages of rules. Pretty hefty rulebook. Pretty meaty game, I would say. It's still a dungeon crawler, but a lot of cool stuff to go through. Here's a picture of the game components. This looked already really good. That rulebook, I would say, is ready to go. You know, this looks great. I'll just, again, scroll through this quickly. They cover the setup, as is usual in a rulebook, how the cards work, characters, orientation is important. So here's where the rules start at page 11, basically where it really starts. Line of sight, line of fire, interesting. Range, of course, important. How the hero phase works. You basically have a hero phase, an enemy phase, and a cleanup phase. How cards work, how movement works. You move orthogonally. There are some skills like agility. It talks about the hero that make you move diagonal, so you're basically faster. Pretty cool. How terrain works, different types of terrain that might slow you down. This I particularly like. Exploration. Whenever you open a new room, so here is an example of a room, little hovel. If you enter that, it is a 4x3 grid, house, room. So they have this tray that you could build, which has 2 dividers, and you put them in at 4 and 3. So you create a little room that's also 4x3, just like this room, and then you toss in dice. So the game will tell you, hey, this kind of dice will spawn here. Take the dice, toss them in, and wherever they land, and with the side up that comes up, is what spawns, or what happens. Could be an enemy, could be a trap. I love that. I hope that they will keep that in. Might seem a little bit random, but hey, it's a dungeon crawler. This could be really tough, really easy. Sometimes you get a lucky break, sometimes you don't. I think that's pretty cool. I like a bit of randomness in my dungeon crawlers. I think that's pretty neat. I have not seen that ever before in a board game. Plus, you don't need a dungeon master. There's no dungeon master like in Hero Quest that has a book with the whole map laid out, with every room and what spawns in every room. This is randomized. Pretty cool. So every time you play a mission, a scenario, it's going to be different. Hero combat, next. How combat works, how health points work. You have the badass dice, of course, with a badass track. You can spend points. Here it mentions how combat is resolved, because the enemies, they can defend and they can attack. You have cards that make combos. You can combo, which is pretty cool. And the enemy reaction phase. So what does the enemy do? What happens when an enemy dies? You get loot. You get cards, you can upgrade your loot, you can upgrade your character. Super cool. There's relics you can use. There's a lot going on in this game. Here's the badass track that I talked about. So you gain badass points by doing certain things, and you can spend those for special feats, which is also pretty cool. Let's see, there's events, like an event deck with traps or things that happen, and an enemy. The enemies have an alert gauge, something like the alarm track in Rightbusters, for example. So they have a rising alertness, which makes them more dangerous as you go. Patrols get more, dangerous. Better enemies, stronger enemies that patrol. Here you can see there's certain lines that mean, hey, the enemy patrols here. They come in from this side and they go out in that side. Pretty cool. Moving enemies, not just static enemies in a room when you open the door. Here it explains how that works. Some enemies can ring the alarm, which makes it even worse. Enemy groups, well, just goes on. This is a meaty rule book. Bosses, also you had these bigger sculpts, big monsters, massive characters, and then there's 2 pages of effects and immunities. Fortunately, just 2 pages. It's not like Batman Gotham City Chronicles with hundreds of different things to remember. No, this is pretty simple. You have some afflictions, bleeding, burning, poison. You can be cursed. You can be disoriented, entangled, petrified, or stunned, and terrified. You can be weakened. That's it. And then you have the enhancements. You can be blessed, enraged, or fortified. Seems doable, right? And then there's a glossary, some of these terms that you'll find. And that's, I believe, 2 pages. I'm not mistaken. No, it's 3 pages. Okay, 3 pages of terms. That's doable, I think. And then we have an index, alphabetical. You can look up all these terms instantly. If you need to find something, it's here, or something else, then it's here, which is fantastic. 51 pages, well, 50 in an index. Fantastic. This looks done. Then here is the quest book. I'm not going to go through this. This quest book with the chapters. First chapter explains how that works. Here's the setup. These 2 tiles is what you use. Here's the patrol route and what you need to do. That's it. And then you have quest 2, etc., etc. Again, pretty big book. Has, let's see, 24 pages for just the core game. And then there's the expansions. So what happened then? They looked for a solution. And here it is, the great news by Maze Games. They have finally, just this week, they announced it. September 21st, it's now 24th. They announced that they found a party that wants to buy their game, which is Monolith Board Games. Fantastic news. Monolith Board Games, also a French company, has a spotless record. Sure, they've had campaigns run late, just like any other. We know that. It's Kickstarter. We know to expect, but they've always delivered, and their games have been received very well. So let's go over Monolith just quickly, hopefully. So their first Kickstarter was Conan. Big game, cool miniatures, 1 versus many. So this game does need a dungeon master or a game master. Looked really, really awesome. I pledged this as well. I have most of Conan. I have the 3 big expansions from the first Kickstarter. And this raised, as you can see here, well, it's hard to read, but it's $3,327,000. That's quite impressive for their first Kickstarter. And that was in 2015, mind you. This was a long time ago. And people were more enthusiastic about Kickstarter back then. But still, that's a lot of money. Very successful. And you can see unboxings of the game on my channel. I'll put a link in the description below. Maybe there's also a link up there. And if you press the I button, I did unboxings of everything Conan. Show them in great detail, especially the miniatures. They're great. Then they did Mythic Battles Pantheon. Again, something I pledged. Also received very well, raised $2,669,000. 13,635 backers. Conan had 16,000 backers as well. Lots of people pledging for their games. And also, Mythic Battles Pantheon, sorry, check out the unboxing on my channel if you want to see those miniatures. Fantastic. Then Batman. And Mythic Battles was in 2016. Batman was in 2018. And before that, they did Conan Book of Set as well, which also raised $500,000 for just some additional stuff for Conan. So then Batman Gotham City Chronicles, $4,400,000. again, I pledged it. I got the 2 boxes. I just went for those. There was an all-in with expansions as well. This game, I have to be honest, wasn't really my bag. I did a cool unboxing. Again, all the miniatures, everything looked top-notch. The components are great. But the rules were just a bit too much for me. All the special skills that your characters could have, there were a lot of keywords. There were just pages of just keywords. And it was too much looking up the rules while playing, which distracted from the gameplay. And I also didn't like that you had a number of rounds to reach your goal, so you had to focus on that. You couldn't, just be Batman and run around and beat up bad guys. There was no time for that. And that was kind of disappointing, but that's on me for not reading the rules before backing. I just pledged this, hoping this would be what I thought it would be, but it wasn't. But it was generally well received. So that was Batman, also very successful. And they did Claustrophobia in, when was this? I don't remember, 2018 or 19. And it raised $750,000. Again, they didn't reach the million, but still pretty good and a really fun game. A friend of mine backed this, played it, super fun, fantastic miniatures, great components, just looked really cool. Then they did something weird. They did Beyond the Monolith core system for all their systems, really, which had a goal of 700,000 euros, got cancelled. They reached $250,000 and they canceled it. They still had, 2,700 backers, which is quite a lot, but it was super confusing. It was super confusing. We didn't understand the animated GIFs on the page to see what you get. Annoying, because you had to wait for it to finish before you could see, and then at some point it'll just vanish again. Don't do that. Please don't do that. This is super annoying. Now it's gone. I was reading that and it's gone. It had these boxes with stuff in it. Sometimes just miniatures and tokens. And people were clueless. What's going on? Look at all these boxes. What is this? People didn't understand. It was too confusing. It did not fund. They canceled. And let's just move on. I don't know what they did there or why. Must have been a brain fart. I don't know. Then they did Conan the Conqueror. Had an edition for Conan. I pledged that as well. Also very successful. That raised 734,000 euros. Also, $750,000. Not bad for a game that they already did before. And new stuff that you could add. Look at those minis. It's just really, really cool. Moving on. They did Mythic Battles. Ragnarok. That raised almost $2.5 million. As you can see here, dollars with 13,000 backers. Once again, so many backers, so much funding. Looked amazing. I did not back that one because in the end I ended up selling my Mythic Battles Pantheon. Didn't play it enough. And so I thought, let's not get into this. But also, these miniatures are amazing. I would have loved to do an unboxing of this. But yeah, funding for me was also a bit of a problem. I can't possibly pledge everything I like, and room. You don't have room for everything. Then they had a season 3 of Batman, which raised almost $1.5 million. As you can see here, 10,000 backers. They're doing really, really well. So when Maze Games announced, hey, Monolith has bought OrcQuest, and they're gonna make our game. What did that mean? Well, great news, of course. So what does that mean for the existing backers of the original campaign? Let's just read this for a bit. They will continue OrcQuest Warpath. Fantastic. Good news for Maze Games. Good news for the backers. They need an objective. They need a funding goal of their new Kickstarter, which they will be launching in the last quarter of 2022, which is now, October, November, December, just a week away from quarter 4 of this year. And they need a funding of $200,000 from new pledges. That's what they need. Given their track record of their previous Kickstarters that we just went through, that should be a walk in the park. I mean, knowing that they produce fantastic games, great miniatures, great components, great artwork, and we've seen how good the miniatures and the artwork already looks from OrcQuest, and we've read the rulebook. Everything here is good, and now with Monolith at the helm, I'm sure they will steam waltz over this funding goal of 200,000. They will reach at least 500,000, at least, and I hope they do, of course. But yeah, that should be very, very doable. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna finalize everything that Maze Games already did, and they're like 90% of the way. They're just gonna finalize that. They are now in charge of the project, of course, and that's good for us. That's good news. And they have promised that every backer of the first campaign will receive an all-in pledge. So that means whatever you pledged, even if you just got the Goblin pledge or the Orc pledge, just the core game with a few stretch goals, they're getting the all-in. So that means all those expansion packs, including all the stretch goals. They will bear the cost of producing and shipping from China to the regional hubs. They will get it to the hubs. All you have to do is, if you're an existing backer, is pay the shipping from the hub to you and the sales taxes, which is 19 to 21% for most European countries, which we still had to pay. And they're talking about 50 to 60, which was kind of what I deduced from the original campaign. They said, like, what was it again? Like $15 to $20. I said double that. And there's VAT, of course. So, I mean, this seems very reasonable. This seems expected. So you just pay that and you get your games. And that's what you should have, paid anyway, had the game actually shipped from Maze Games today. So fantastic. And, some people might say, hey, but I pledged for the all-in and I'm getting the all-in, but some people pledged for just, half of what I pledged and they're getting the all-in as well. Is that fair? Look, by now it's gone to a new owner, it's gone to Monolith. They are basically have no obligation to bring this game to the existing backers, right? It's a new owner, but they're still gonna do it. I say it's a bonus for those backers. Good for them. Fantastic. Just a generous offer of Monolith Games. It's probably to cut down costs because there were so many expansions, and they are going to put all those mini expansions, those little boxes, into one big box to save on costs. So you're getting a core game box and an expansions box, and the stretch goals are just worked in there. That's what you're getting, which I prefer. I like seeing two, same size boxes on my Calyx shelf instead of all these little boxes like Command did with the others. That's just annoying. That's horrible storage. You just want a big box. And they're doing that. So that's a plus. They say here, yeah, we can achieve this by unifying the offer. We're going to do a unique pledge for an all-in order to limit the multiplication costs of inducers, which are packaging, order preparation, and shipping, by grouping all the expansions in a single box. That saves on logistics, manufacturing costs. Great. And that is why the original backers will all get an all-in. So there's going to be probably just one pledge level for all of it, which I think will be worth it. So that's fantastic news. It's fantastic news. So here, he says again, the state of the game, most of it is over. Development is almost over. Miniature molds are final. We've seen them. We just went over them. They are optimizing the packaging to group the expansions, which they already said. They're reworking the layout. Fine. Adjusting some aspects of the game. Some of the dice. I hope they will keep the room spawning dice, because I love that. But, they might make it less random, perhaps a bit more tactical, as we're used to from Monolith Games. So you're sure. I'm okay with that. And they'd like to thank us for our patience and support. Maze Games, thank you. This looked like it was just a loss, but you found a solution, and thank you, Monolith, for being that solution. I think that's great news. I'm thrilled to finally see this game become a reality, and it will, because $200,000, they're just gonna smash that goal, I'm sure. So keep an eye on the Monolith Facebook page, their social media, Kickstarter. I will also share it on my social media. So if you follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course subscribe, please, here on YouTube, I'll also keep you informed. I'll share any news that I find. And yeah, just go to the Monolith page and hit, and you'll be the first to know. And they do have a cool teaser, which I could show you for a bit. It's 30 seconds. It's pretty cool. Here you see the orcs. Looks really cool. OrcQuest Warpath. So there you go. Last quarter of 2022. Cool. And that's all I have to say about that. Oh, I have to pause it. So that's it. You could read all of this on the Kickstarter page if you want to have more details about that. Once again, just go to the OrcQuest Warpath page by Maze Games on Kickstarter, and you'll see all the things that they have already done. You can download the rules already on their Maze Games website. I'll put a link in the description below. And that's it. I hope this was informative. I hope this helped you make a decision if you want to back the game or not. Let me just switch back here. So with that said, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button once again. It really, really helps my channel. And if you'd like to support me financially, I also have a Patreon page, which you can find in the links below or the icon at the end of this video. And you can support me for as little as just €1 per month or more, which is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for watching. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Have a good one.